All right, this video ought to be really fun. So we're going to dive into some positioning stuff for infielders, a little bit about where they're setting up stance-wise, some prep step technique stuff, and we're really going to try to identify some details. And we're really, to be honest with you, there's not really a plan going into it. Besides, let's learn as much as we can in the next, I don't know how much time we got. Well, we'll ride this out. This is probably going to be more of a longer form video, so I apologize to those of you who like the shorter ones. But first thing, let's do this. Let's go team positioning. That way we can get an idea defensively of how teams are setting up. We want to get specific with this. So let's go right-handed batter, no runners on. And so we should be able to see the amount of shades they have. So let's get specific when they say shades, okay? So we're going to dive into the glossary here. That way we have an idea of standard, shift, shaded, strategic, okay? So standard, traditional spot. Shift, 3 or more infielders on the same side of second base. Obviously we don't have that anymore, so we won't see any shifts. Shaded, at least one fielder is positioned outside the area of the field they're typically responsible for. For example, the shortstop is shaded when playing up the middle against a left-handed bat or toward the third base zone against right-handed batter. So when we look at this, it's funny, I've dug into this a little bit before. There's not really a standard. We don't use standard much. It's almost always some kind of shaded movement. The only time you'll see something outside of that is like a strategic move where the third baseman has been shaded over into the 6 hole on a left-handed bat, but with his depth cut. Because when he's normally shaded, he's playing with much more depth in that 6 hole. So let's dive into this a little bit. That way, because again, that comment of shaded can be a little bit misleading. But this gives us a good idea. So this is the Red Sox here. We'll zoom in on this a little bit. This is essentially a heat map of where they play, right? Now, each park is different. So for the outfielders positioning, we're going to make the assumption that their angle across the field probably won't change too much, barring like significant outfield wall changes, stuff like that. But their depth will. Their depth will move with the space they have to cover and likelihood of balls being hit in a certain spot. Now, what's really cool about this is you start to see this second base dot. This is on a right-handed bat, I believe. Yeah, right-handed bat. The second base dot's going to hold middle pretty tight. So when we talk about like shaded versus standard, like they're going to stay here almost always. Like rarely will you find a right-handed bat that just lives in this space here. And even if he does, the exit velocities we see on the ground to this side aren't high enough to where it would warrant him having to get over here. So keeping in mind that the first baseman also shades in too. So you'll see a wider range of movement from setup positioning from shortstop and first baseman. A lot of that has to do with arm strength, range. For first baseman, it has mainly to do with like how much ground can we get them to cover while still getting back to the base. And so there's a lot of different kinds of movers we have over there. That's why there's a bigger bubble. And then third base and second base is more like, I heard this comment a while back and I like it. This would kind of be like our anchor point for these guys. They're not going to move too much. Like their deviation is going to be very slight when they make their adjustments. Like they see a batter who's late, he's not going to shade way over here. He's still going to kind of hunt the middle of his bubble a little bit to the outside part. But so that's the Red Sox, and it's really cool. Like we can kind of just click and select whatever team we want. The Guardians were fantastic last year at Team D, and here are their positionings. So same situation. But look at the difference in where the shortstop's playing. There's a little bit more deviation in third base too. Way less deviation in first, which it's funny because Naylor is one of those guys who covers a ton of ground. His OAA is pretty through the roof. And so to have him consistently in one spot and having him aggressive into this 4 hole, that way Jimenez can take the middle, that was a pretty smart move. But then you got Rocio who will bounce around positionally, and that there's a lot. Like I said, there's going to be a lot more mobility from the shortstop, moving back and forth while that third baseman kind of anchors. But they do a really good job as well. Let's go ahead and bounce over to the left, and we'll use the Guardians again for this, just because they were so good last year. Like I said, that third baseman is actually going to sink all the way into the 6 hole, maybe even a little bit past it. Now, in a bunt situation, he'll come in. So on these bubbles, you'll see this third baseman's not ground coverage, but like positioning setup start to leak much more in towards home plate because of the fact that there might be bunt guys. They might need to cut depth on that. The shortstop's going to be anchored, kind of like the second baseman was last time. I would expect a little bit more deviance from the second baseman here. But with Jimenez and with Naylor's accelerated ground coverage to his right, and that's because of this prep stuff. We can look into that later. But this is a pretty standard setup when we look across the board. Let's look at the Yankees do a pretty good job from a positioning standpoint. Like I said, this bubble is going to float down from the third baseman because he's going to have to drop his depth. But that shortstop's going to pretty much be anchored. We see more deviation with the second baseman here than what we saw previously, and that first baseman's going to be anchored too. So again, it's one of those things where finding where the second baseman plays is really important here, because it has a lot to do with how well your first baseman can cover ground to his right. Because in the past, we would have taken the second baseman and went plop, shallow right? Take the shortstop over here, and that first baseman, anything to his right, he pretty much, like, if it was more than 2 steps, he's leaving, going back. Anymore, we're coaching him to be aggressive to his right, because he's got to create this ground coverage in the 4-hole and trust that first baseman or that pitcher can get over and make the play, which is tough. But when we look at OAA scores, the guys who are more aggressive to the right have a score way through the roof, and that's we've touched on that in an infield chat video previously, but it's interesting to see, and it's funny, like, the situation with positioning here is so cool because we look at where these guys are set up. Watch how similar this is to when there's a runner on first base. And you'll see, like, this is pretty much universal across the board. Whatever angle you're playing from a positioning standpoint in terms of your depth, you just cut. So that first baseman, obviously, he's holding, so that'd be different. But they're just cutting depth. They just shrink in a little bit. And even in this situation, like, you're not really shrinking in too far. You don't have to, because you got your positioning dictates that middle infielder is going to be on the base anyway. If it's a right-handed bat, he slings over. The only question mark would be like, okay, if something happens here, who's got second base on the turn? Oftentimes it's going to be the shortstop if it's like a ball hit here. But to be honest with you, that's not very likely off a lefty bat. And then the positioning obviously changes. The depth is even more extreme in the depth change because the likelihood of a bunt goes up. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I like looking at this stuff, and just as a note, like, they're going to take their original stakes where they would play with no one on and just shrink depth and cut it. The only outlier would be first baseman. And then if there's a runner on second, that third baseman probably isn't going to be shaded so far over. We don't want to just hand these guys third, but it'd probably be a little bit in the middle there. So let's take a look at some leaderboards. That way we can get an idea of some outs above average stuff. That way we can try to identify some technique notes that we have here. So we've got Jimenez at the top. 21 is wild. Jacob Young with 20, Semien with 19. It's funny. Let's remember we made that comment about first baseman. Take a look at this. So if we go to first base, and you've got to be aggressive to the 4 holes of first baseman because of more so because of the shift rules. If you look prior to shift rules, you're not seeing 14 or 13s. But if we look to the players right, like, that's where they're scoring their points. Even the guys down here, like Olsen, is that Cronenworth? Cronenworth's +6 to his right because he has to be. Now he's -4 to his left, which isn't great. But he's still adding success rate because of how aggressive he is to his right. And so trying to find ways to consistently be good to both directions is important, but that 4 holes is your moneymaker. As a defender, like, there's so many more balls that are hit to that direction. To be able to get that ground coverage handled and make that play, it's so much more important. And then because it's a little bit dependent on handedness too. As a right-handed batter, you'll notice, like, there's not very many points being scored comparatively to the lefty bats, at least not for the high scorers, because of that 4 hole. When you're in your right-handed hitter stakes, that first baseman can't really expand that range with trust because he's not going to be able to get to the bag the same way. Even on the left-handed hitter stakes, it's really hard to get back to the bag without trusting that move. But the likelihood of a play being made, because it's a shorter throw, a little bit quicker to get the ball out, there's a much higher chance of getting these outs on the lefty bat. Let's look. Here we go. We'll go with Naylor. We'll go with Naylor here, wherever he's at. Let me search for him. Here we go. Josh Naylor. Dead even at first base. -2 to his left. -2 to his left. To his right, he's +3. So he's positive to his right. Let's take a look at why. And so I've got this question a lot on social media. about how to find the 3D videos I use. I'm going to show you right here. I have an MLB account, which I'm pretty sure anyone can get. It's not a big deal to do that, but you go to scores. Now before that, actually, I'll catch myself. We only get highlight reel plays here. So the trick is you kind of type in, I guess Josh Naylor diving play, because otherwise we don't really get to see his technique too much. So we want to try to find something from 2024. 526. And so you just find a date that will play. And so here's, okay, it's December 8th, April 10th, 2024. Let's see if this is right, or if this is just a story that they posted on that day. There's a double. It's a lot of hitting. See if we can find any plays here that he makes. This is July 12th. So here's the highlight. Fantastic. So we can take a look at the prep step here. That was a crazy play. I hit the base. That'll be fun to watch anyway. So that is July 12th, just to confirm. Yes, July 12th. So then we go to here. We go to July 12th. And we find the Guardians game. Right here, we go to box. We go to box score. Now you can do this on your phone too, but it's not as easy to operate. On the computer, you can double click, guys, and it'll take you straight to like essentially their view. Here's one from Palacios. This 3-0. Oh, right-handed bat. This might not be the same play. That's all right, as long as we're seeing the prep step. So we go here. We're gonna take our settings. We're gonna go to 1/4 speed. We're gonna double click Naylor. Okay, so now we can see the timing of everything. Now he does a post-contact landing, but he doesn't get airborne. So watch his right foot, watch when it lands. Oh, he's way early there. Walk to his left. Dude, just a little bounce. But you can't see the ball here. This is that same play. There he goes in. Watch the technique. So there were times last year, especially towards the end of the season, where he would rock into his right step right there, and that's all he would do. Right now, it looks like he's struggling to find his timing with his airborne prep step. Looks like that was an adjustment they made. That's so funny to see the evolution of what they're teaching as the year goes on. Such a cool play. But again, here's his positioning. Like, he's tight to that line. Lefty bat, tight to the line. And he's going to have to be aggressive here, hard in this space too. So cool. Let me see if we can find anything else. July 30. Ooh, here we go. Diving stop. This is August 2nd. Ooh, to his right. And as we saw, the range wasn't great to his right. July 30, I believe, just to confirm. Yeah. This is so fun. So yeah, you just go in through this way and you can find all your data that you need. You can take 3D angles of whatever you want. You can drag the cameras around. So these are, these I believe are made from the Hawkeye, the different Hawkeye angles that we have. Now, is that what we're looking for? They have pretty much all the highlight plays. Sometimes they don't have them. Here's one. This might not even be a highlight, but we'll be able to see prep step and reaction time here. Looks like the ball's hit to Jimenez. But again, the technique's really important to address, like when they're getting their timing. And it's funny, like when, at least from my end, when I started working with professional guys, like we started trying to address the tempo and the timing differently because we wanted to be more consistent with our post-contact landing and stuff like that. So I wonder, it's 3D. Sometimes the 3Ds don't work, by the way. That's kind of the other poor side of it. Turn that off. Yeah. Bummer. And yeah, so sometimes the 3Ds don't work, but you take what you take, and I wish I had access to everything in 3D. That way I could like really hunt to see who's on time the most and stuff like that. But unfortunately, we just get the highlights. So let's take a look at a couple different things here. Let's try to find a defensive play here. Here we go. Okay, so now we've got a defensive play for the Guardians, and this was mentioned to me at the ABCA by somebody, and I want to dig into this concept. So here we've got Ibanez. Let's watch where his feet set up. Okay, not bad. Let's slow this down. It's too much at once in 3D. Man, he is Chapman wide, man. Okay, now here's the cool part. We can drag this. So he's standing square to the batter, right? So if we had an arrow where his belt was pointing, it would be dead on. But it's funny, if we're trying to maximize ground coverage, let's see if there's anything here. Usually the teams who have the most consistent ground coverage as a group work together in the infield, and to do that, they change their angles. And I haven't looked enough into this to where I actually have a decent thought on it, to be honest with you. But let's dig into this anyway. So we got Trey Turner, right-handed batter. I love looking at the Yankees because I can always go to Volpe. If you want to find like an attention to detail king, this is the guy we want to look for. And he's not perfect, but he's one of the closest ones in terms of like trying to make sure his technique's right and stuff like that. Now Volpe will do a post-contact landing. So if we watch this, we'll watch this all the way through and then we'll slow it down. He's airborne, ball gets hit to his right. Jazz makes a cool play. Very nice. Now, that's not really what I wanted to see. We've already talked about that. Where's his belt pointing? Now he's airborne here. Okay. His belt's pointing like there. Maybe more towards the batter. Where are his feet standing? That's almost more towards the line. Look at the stance. The stance is open. Okay. Very cool. So you'll notice the lower half is almost, it's not perpendicular to the line, but it's much more in line with the line than it is with home plate. Now the hips and the chest are looking towards the batter. Cool. I wonder if that's what we see on the other side too. Now up the middle it might be different. This is gonna be hard because LeMahieu's squared up. He's a little closed off. There. Okay, very cool. And so a lot of people are trying to essentially make this stance perpendicular, which is interesting because I'll kind of show you here. Let's get this big. Change the camera. So this has really cool camera angles. You can switch it to whatever you need. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. Once you move it around once, you're good. Just you got to make sure you can move it. Okay. So here's our infield. Okay. Harper's at the dish. Volpe's going to be up the middle. He's going to be squared up, I believe. Now Jazz, who I believe is the third, I believe the plan is to have him even with the line, that he can better cover this ground, because otherwise if he's square to the plate, he's going to have to work over his hip to get to his left. Chances are the ball's hit to his left more. That also helps Volpe out, because if he's doing what they normally do, he's prep stepping towards the middle. Let's go through this and find out. Just in slow-mo. It is now. It's a big moment. Base is juiced. There's our post-contact landing. It's a little closed off. Nothing crazy. More open than towards the plate. Look at that. You can really tell there. Like, look at the lower half. The hips and the chest will mislead you. The lower half tells the story. That's really cool. So now let's see what Volpe does here. Oh, I gotta get to a view that has Volpe in it. Again, this stuff is sweet, but I just wish it was a little bit easier to operate. I can't complain though. It's really cool. Let's see. Look at this. Oh my gosh. Oh, I haven't seen anything like this before. He's not even here either. He's still slanted. He's prep stepping that way. Like back into this space instead of across. That's sick. Look at that. That's incredible. Off the glove to Gleyber. Holmes is getting over there. This is so cool. Okay. Let's look and see what Gleyber was doing here. And gotta go to a different view to get to Gleyber. See where his hips were. He's pretty closed off. It looks like he's in at the plate. Bounce. That's unfortunate. Nice little dart toss. Clay Holmes, you're tall. So cool. So yeah, there's a lot of different things we're doing technique-wise, but I don't know why. I said this earlier in the year. I don't know why people aren't doing this. I'm trying to get a prep step across the base. Like, not that you're landing across, but get momentum going to your left. If we would have shifted over the base previously, like before the shift limitations, why not try to add momentum there if you're doing a post-contact landing, which it's funny, like with the minor league guys I've worked with, it doesn't seem like that's being taught organizationally, but in a few spots. It looks like really only one spot where it's all the way from top to bottom. But then you look at their big league club and they're doing it there. So I don't know if it's like a secret they're trying to keep. Here's the problem. It's right here. Like, any average Joe can come see this. Like, there's nothing special about how this works. And we're doing it as runners too. Look at when we're landing. Well, sure, where I didn't pick the best base runner, but let's see. When does he land here? Shuffle. Shuffle. Post contact. I mean, we do it as runners almost intuitively. I don't even know if that's something that's taught. And it's funny, like if we're teaching that to runners to accelerate their jump, right? Why are we not teaching that to infielders? And don't get me started on new school techniques. It's the same concept, right? It's funny that play as a shortstop coming across the bag is like a vault. It's really, really cool to think about. So let's look at some outs above average here. Let's try to find what's a good position. Let's go with third baseman and a left-handed shift. Let's go with third baseman and a left-handed shift. So we want someone who scores well against left-handed bats. Okay, Ryan McMahon does very poorly to his right. But he does really well to his left, especially on lefty bats. He's getting a lot of points. So he's aggressive. He's aggressive when he's in that shift. So let's go find the Rockies now. As much as I love the Rockies, and I'm a Tovar fan, I'm not so sure that from what I've seen, it's as elevated conceptually what they're doing in the infield as what some of the other groups are doing. But I might be wrong. So let's check out the Rockies. Let's type in McMahon here. Ryan McMahon. I'm gonna type this wrong. Don't laugh. I know I just saw it. Oh boy, it's tough. All right, 8/11/2024, and we go to scores. It's funny. Like, it used to take me so long to search for this stuff, and now it's like, oh, it's the easiest thing. Now he might not be on a lefty bat here, but chances are he's probably not. Most balls that are hit the third base are from a righty, but let's see. Yeah, looks like a righty. Looks like he went airborne though. Check out his technique here. I just don't know. And again, just double click, give us this viewpoint. Don't forget to slow it down. It gets super glitchy if you go full speed. Even when it's slowed down, sometimes it's glitchy. Like we can't really see connection between the feet and the ground. And it's a little bit framey, but it gives us an idea of the technique. They were grounded movers, the Rockies, from what I saw. Yeah. It's a great play. So that closed, not closed off, that prep step stance where you're more lined up with the baseline as opposed to the batter does hinder our range to our right. Because now we have to work over our hip more. But let's see where his stance is. It looks like it is a little bit open. More perpendicular to the baseline than the batter. Remember, the hips and the eyes will mislead you. There's contact. No, he's open. Look at the feet. Yeah, he is really perpendicular. Now let's take a look at, I think this is Tovar over here. I might be wrong. See what he's doing? Yeah. Now that ball's being hit right now, and it looks like he's just walking into his prep step. Which, I apologize if I'm wrong here. Okay, so here's the deal. This is so funny. I've done breakdowns on Tovar before, and one of my big mistakes that I make is I just assume that the one rep that I see is his technique that he's always done and will forever do. I was wrong. I had Tovar as a grounded mover. This dude is 100% getting airborne here. He walks into it. I mean, that's good. He just needs to land maybe a hair later. No, that's clean. The only thing I would say, technique-wise, and I guess just from my viewpoint, why is the foot not breaking to the right? Why is his right foot not opening up? He's getting wide too soon. He's still airborne here. And again, look, he's more in line with the baseline too. Less so than the third baseman. That's so cool. Our second baseman, look at his feet. Same deal. He's parallel with the other baseline. That's really cool. So you would imagine that, like, for a guy like Tovar, that this foot can tuck in and go, but maybe it's hit so much to his extremity, he just knew it wasn't his ball. But to be honest with you, when I look at guys like Volpe who do stuff like this, like his foot is still tucking and going. So I would say it's more of a technique thing where his feet need to start a little bit tighter. Watch. So it looks tight right here. Right as he goes airborne, he widens out really quick. Starts widening out right as he jumps. It's too wide. Too wide at that point. What a play. So funny. Watching the guys who don't have the play and just watching their body language. They both go down like, oh, I'll do it. Yeah, good job, man. Good job. So cool. So yeah, again, I had in my books that Tovar is a grounded mover, and it's like, if you don't watch the reps consistently enough, obviously that's a good way to get lost. So you think you have evidence, but it's about the sample size, right? So McMahon, again, perpendicular to the baseline and not the batter. So when you're looking at these new things, it's like, it's not new. It's not like revolutionary stuff, but it is stuff that helps you be better. Let's look at a first baseman. And there's a lot of different techniques that first basemen are doing. Ty France does this really cool thing where he prep steps to his left. I wonder, do we have any of him? We do. He had a rough one. Oh no. Remember how I said he prep steps to his left? His range to his right is really poor. Probably because of that. He was below average defense, but he just had a rough year. Let's take a look and see what he was doing. Usually when they have a rough year, they don't have too many diving plays, but France, 724. 724. And so, yeah, make sure, I used to just click the day and go next day, next day, next day, and that was painful. Use the calendar. I know the calendar's right there. It's obviously you should use it. I spent like 3 months not using the calendar. That was a problem. Braves Reds. Okay, video. Freely. Zuna. It's funny. What we'll do is we'll take a look at De La Cruz's prep steps too, because he does like a lean to his right, and he's really poor to his left. So his is post contact, but still, it's like takes him out of it. Ton of video here. Oh, so we don't have Ty Francis diving play. Oh, you hate to see it. We'll watch this instead. So we should be able to see Francis prep step still. So here's a guy, right-handed bat. Actually, we can't. He's holding a runner on. We'll see his prep step, but we won't see it the way we want to. Look at the positioning. Like I said, that second baseman's going to be anchored up the middle pretty much always. It does make covering on a stolen base incredibly easy, which is super helpful. But you got to have the data to back it up. I wouldn't advise that to like a high school group or anything like that. So from what I've seen in the past, De La Cruz gets a heavy, like, weighted step on his right foot. Let's see if he does it here. Yep, there he goes. He lands post-contact, but it's still, you got momentum going to your right. It's really hard to break to your left. The only time I would advise that is when you're fighting the shift limitation, right? That's not something, when we watch the Volpe video of him, like, prep stepping across, that's not an always thing either. Like if he's feeling that that's not the space, obviously I'm sure he's got the go ahead to make that adjustment. But when he's standard in his space, he's just going to shift to where he needs to shift, and then he's going to be up, down, neutral, no weight gain to a certain direction. Because our positioning should tell us, like, that should give us favor, not the momentum. And like I said, that's only when you're fighting shift limitations. See if there's another diving play that France made at 8:16. 8:16. Let's take a look at it. Oh boy, that's not it. Let's pause that. I wish we had this access for minor league players too. I understand why it isn't a thing. It's too expensive, but would be really cool. And I think for coaches and stuff, Hawkeye data is so limited. It's incredible. Like, you get a ton of stuff, but if you don't have the multiple cameras, it's really hard to piece together a decent 3D image. Here we go. All right, now this is France going to his left on the line. Excuse me. 1-2 count. Now, he might be expecting a rollover here to his right side or to his left side, but he is the one who usually prep steps this way to his left. Let's see if he does it here or if that's only in his right-handed hitter stakes. Perry Hill product. Played with Evan White with the Mariners for a little bit. Walks into it. There's a step to his left. There he goes. Yep, prep step to his left. Look at him go. Now here's the thing. Let's look at the stance. A little bit closed off, not bad. Probably more, it's at first base, he's still probably more perpendicular to the line with his feet than the batter. But again, what we talked about previously with the third baseman is the same with first base. If we're perpendicular to the line, to the edges of the field, we're at a deficit, right? So he's got to go over his hip to get here. But again, if you're on a post-contact landing, it does allow him, watch his left foot open up. Boom. So now that move makes him anchor back. You see what I'm saying? Like, he's got to go over that hip, almost roll his ankle, right? But it does give him a better shot rather than landing square. So that post-contact landing allows you to do a lot of different stuff. And it does make his angle and route a little bit steeper. Notice how he dove. He went hard left and then is diving backwards like that. It's funny, like, you can attribute that to kind of like an outfield route too. Like, would you rather have like a perfectly executed route, or would you rather get a quick first step, right? And so the data supports getting a perfect or a better first step, because that route correction is going to happen regardless. and at the very least, it gives you a shot to make the play. Now, we want both. It'd be great to have both, like a perfect route, perfect first step, but you don't get that. It's usually one or the other, and they're teaching that first step, which is why that post-contact prep step in the outfield, I think it makes the most sense to me. The only caveat that I think I would have is like more damage can happen to our extremities in the outfield, right? If we get beat on like a weird kind of like floaty knuckly line drive back and left to us where our route was like super tight, then we had to cut back. And the infield, it doesn't hurt as much, right? That's not like a two-base error. In the outfield, if you get beat over your head, you don't have help. You have a wall. That's about it. And so let's do that for a second. So that'll be it for the infield portion. Let's change gears here. Let's go to outfielders. And so I like looking at the outfield jump. That gives us a really, really good idea of ground coverage and stuff like that. Now, feet versus average isn't always great. You might cover a lot of ground, but if it's like you're covering ground super inefficiently, that's not great either. But usually the feet versus average gives us a really good idea of who has the best chance to get the most outs. This tells us who gets the most outs, this OAA. So Brenton Doyle flies. He's very, very fast, but his reaction is really poor, right? And so we could make the assumption that he's saying, you know what, I'm so traditionally fast that I'm just going to get a really, really good read on the ball and then burn to it. But again, he's covering less feet than most and just barely above average in feet coverage. But he is getting a lot of outs above average comparatively. So he's also really good at finishing the plays. We have a guy like Varsho. I've made a video on him before, but like he's a post-contact landing guy, catcher turned into outfielder, just kind of a dog out there. He covers more feet than the average. His reaction time is really, really fast because of that post-contact landing. Now his route is very average. So 0 is average, and anything below that is negative. But again, our top ground cover guy, our guy who gets the most outs, has a really, really poor route, right? And so you'll have guys like PCA and Doyle who are like pure burners that are just reading it. I've got a feeling that their outs above average would skyrocket had they had a quicker reaction time and then just made route corrections. So the ability to not panic in the outfield is very valuable. Finding the right techniques are really important. But let's look at Varsho here. We'll look at Varsho. I could also go to my OneDrive for this, but I think it's more fun to show you guys how to do this. 7/5/2024. And so Varsho, I just like his story too. Like catcher turned outfielder, Milwaukee guy. You know what I mean? 7/24 for the Jays. Kind of can do it all, right? He's not just stuck in center. He's playing left a lot. Like people don't realize how hard it is to bounce from the corners to center to the corner. Like the view is so much different. And center fielder is actually way easier to see the flight and stuff like that. But to get a read on the ball's really tough in the corners. You just have more ground to cover if you're in center field, which makes sense. Here we go. I think I've got this video on my OneDrive too. Put some up on the wall. If I'm right, the 3D kind of shakes his body around when he hits the wall. Okay. Is this him? Yeah. Okay. Now this is going to be tough to see because I can't zoom in too much either. That's as close as we can get. I can't do it and play it. All right, we're live. There's the pitcher. Legs lifting up. Goes to deliver. Narrow stance to wide stance. Varsho gets airborne. Then he reacts back. Notice how much later that happens as opposed to the infielders. But watch again. Because of that post-contact landing and because he's getting going so quick, his route efficiency on this ball is probably super poor. Watch his first step. It's like straight sideways. Boom, there he goes. Left foot opens up. He's kicking. And then right about here, he starts to realize, I better get back. And so there's the route correction there. And now he's running straight back. And so people would argue, well, why not just wait longer and then get a more direct route? Well, to be honest with you, getting up to speed is the most important thing. Yep, there's the wall. Look at this. Get up there. Yeah, glitching out. So cool though. He made the catch. But the most important thing is getting to speed and then making your route corrections after that, because it gives you the chance to make a play. That's what we're looking for. Just give us a chance to make the play, especially on these balls that are like really, really super low catch probability balls. And again, we'll watch that technique one more time. He's really consistent with his stuff. That was clean. That might have even been some matter that was a little bit late in a lot of what he does. But the technique is really, really nice from him. And he'll do that in center as well. It's just in center field, from my end anyway, it looks as if he's trying, because I've seen a ton of his stuff. In center field, it looks as if he's trying to get closer to contact because he doesn't have a body hiding the barrel path. He can see the bad angle and kind of play that a little bit differently too. Just my thoughts. I might be wrong there, but very, very cool. Now let's look at someone who doesn't do that. A couple off the top of my mind that I want to look. So Kiermaier is a grounded mover. And again, look at the burst. Like, he just burns. Like, the burst is essentially what I would attribute to pure speed. The burst is like how fast can you accelerate, and then the route is, as we can see up here, the route is the two combined. So from a route standpoint, like, during this burst and reaction, is your route efficient? Jacob Young, it is not, but he also crushed it, right? So let's look at Jacob Young, see what he's doing. From what I've seen in the past, he was grounded 425. Excuse me. 425. And it's cool to watch the young players too, like, develop and make their adjustments. Jacob Young plays for the Nationals, right? I think he plays for the Nationals. He does. Oh, here they are. I am blind. Okay. Here we go. And like I said, if you're not watching enough video here, you can, just like I did with Tovar, like you could assume they're doing something different than what they actually are. And there's the line drive. We'll watch that after to see what the difference is between that. It might not even be a catchable ball, but let's take a look at this. I wish it had the catch probability on the play. That would be so sick if it added the catch probability in on this. We could probably go back to the broadcast and they'd probably put it on there, but okay, let's slow it down. Play ball. Man, it's hard with Hernandez's name and Gomez. Is it Gomez? Oh, whoa. That was sick. I've never seen that. So it looks like he's got a post-contact prep step on an angle, right? Look at the feet. Little bounce here. Little bounce and into his right. He's got momentum going that way. What? Look at where he stands. So he's like a hybrid stagger stance post-contact. It's a right-handed bat, right? Hold on. Right-handed hitter? Yeah. Right-handed hitter. And I know we positionally have started to favor the opposite field gap with right-handed hitters. Oh, not ideal. Over there. Oh my gosh. Sometimes it's hard to click these guys because you're trying to like find the angle to get to them. Give me the catcher. Maybe. Oh, you hate to see it. You guys are seeing me at my most frustrated right now. See, again, I'm not smart enough to really manage this well. I just have to change the view. There we go. Now we're back. Watch that one more time. That was so sick. All right, let's watch the whole play here. Prep steps into his right with a slight slant. Wow, gets a really good shape there at the beginning. Puts him in a really good spot to cover ground with depth to that angle too. It just sticks you. Hell of a play. It just sticks you when and if the ball gets hit to this gap. But to be honest, maybe they're okay with that. Because remember, positionally, we tend to favor this other side. With the right-handed batter, we're starting to shift our guys over to the opposite side. See where this guy is. I mean, he's playing pretty deep. He could be playing the park too. Maybe it's a positioning thing where like he's playing deeper and more this way so he can do that and then still make his move and get his move off that way. That's wild. Let's see if he did that earlier in the game. Remember we had that other play. Click. Here we go. That's so cool. I've not seen that before. I've seen stagger stance and I've seen like a more squared up post contact landing. I've not seen anything like that to where Cody, click the camera. There we go. Okay. Let's see it. This ball falls. He's doing it again. That's more neutral. That is wild. Now, those are two right-handed bats. I wonder if he switches it for a lefty. That'd be tough to do and still be consistent with it. I mean, he got that ball quick. Yo, does he throw him out here? Oh, no, it bounces. Okay. Okay, let's try to find a lefty bat. Actually, the ball doesn't really even need to be hit to him. Yeah. Ball doesn't need to be hit to him, right? We just need to see the prep step. Let's see if he goes opposite. That is wild. Okay. Right here. Slow it down. Here we go. It was left, right on a slant is what he was doing. Oh my gosh. What was that? Is he like crawling up? Left, right, airborne. Nope. That's the inning. And he's anticipating shallow and in to his right. Now, you would think that with that technique, if he was doing that the whole year, which he might not have been, but if he was doing that technique the whole year, his range to his left should be poor, and his range to his right and in should be great. Let's see. We can go to out above average. Outfield directional, out above average. Again, if you don't have this stuff, I mean. Okay. So his back left is 1. His back is -2. His back right is 3. Which is interesting. All of his to the back is 2. In and to the left. In and to the right should be high. And all of these ends should be really high. That's right, because he's got momentum going forward. Even if it's slightly to his right, that still gives him a boost. What? And so then the ball's to his back, he's negative, and to his back left, he's just barely above average. So we could attribute that to his speed, because that technique doesn't really help him to his back left. It gives him a safety net because he's still slanted. But he's moving a little to his right, so I guess he can route correct it over his right hip to his right. But really, I'm surprised this is as high as it is. Straight back makes sense. Like, he's slanted. It's going to be such a tough move. Let's look at his sprint speed. He's got to be quick. Yeah, 97th percentile. I mean, let's look at the fielding. Run value is super high. That's wild. Interesting. So he's adding, he's intentionally trying to take away more balls that are lower line drives, I'm assuming. Because he's far above average in right. Look at that. He's added 4% of catch percentage, which is really high. Now, he gets punished moving backwards. He's not as efficient moving backwards, which probably, I'd have to find some kind of data on that to be like, okay, what percentage of balls hit the outfield or behind them? What percentage are catchable that are hit in front? Wow, that's really cool. I've not seen that before. Maybe that's something to look into more too. So at least at the we'll end on that. Because I want to do some digging there, and it's not going to be super watchable, to be honest with you. Not that the rest of this probably was, but it's going to be more like me silently sitting here and trying to take notes. But that's so cool. That's so cool. So I hope you guys like this video. Let me know if you have questions. Feel free to reach out. I will talk to you guys later.